a soaking wet circuit, rain hammering the tarmac, and a four-time Formula One world champion driving a Nissan. Not a Red Bull, not a championship contender. A Nissan Z Nismo GT500, sideways, flat out, completely alive. This wasn't a publicity stunt. This was a man telling the world exactly how he feels. And the world is finally starting to listen. So here's the question that nobody in the paddock wants to answer. What happens when the greatest driver of his generation stops caring about Formula One? And more importantly, has it already begun? Wind the clock back just days before the 2026 Japanese Grand Prix weekend. While other drivers were sightseeing, taking photographs, playing the media game, Max Verstappen was at Fuji Raceway, lapping in the wet, pushing machinery to its absolute limit. With Nissan executives watching from the pit wall and fans packed around the barriers just to see him move. No cameras required. No championship points on the line. Just a man and a machine in conditions that would send most drivers straight back to their hotel. The GT500 Nismo is no toy. 2-liter inline engine, 650 horsepower, mid-engined, rear-wheel drive, just over 1,000 kilograms. Built for Japan's Super GT series, one of the most demanding racing environments on the planet. And Verstappen drove it like he'd been born in it. But this wasn't just a fun Wednesday. This was a statement. Because just weeks before Fuji, something happened at the Nurburgring that shook the foundations of everything Formula One thinks it stands for. Verstappen entered NLS2, the Nurburgring Langstrecken Serie, in a Mercedes GT3 under his own team banner. Team Verstappen Racing crossed the finish line nearly 1 minute ahead of their rivals. 1 minute. In endurance racing, that's not a victory. That's a demolition. But that was just the start. Because what happened next changed everything. Team Verstappen Racing was disqualified. A technical infringement, exceeding E-tire set limit during qualifying. The win, stripped. Just like that. And yet, Max Verstappen left the Nürburgring as the biggest winner in the building. On paper, a disqualification looks like failure. That's the simple reading. That's what the headlines said. But look closer, and the numbers tell a completely different story. The NLS2 livestream generated 6.1 million views in just 24 hours. The onboard camera from the number 3 Verstappen racing car alone pulled 1 million views. For context, other onboard cameras on that same race typically generate between 5 and 25,000 views. One driver, one weekend, 100 times the attention. And here's where the story gets uncomfortable for Formula One. Those aren't F1 numbers arriving at a Nürburgring endurance race. Those are Verstappen numbers, traveling with him, wherever he goes. Formula One didn't lend him that audience. He built it himself. So when the sport's own bosses publicly called him wrong for criticizing the 2026 regulations, when they told him to leave if he doesn't like it, did they stop to ask themselves one critical question? What leaves with him? Let's go back to the Nürburgring. Because this is where Verstappen said the quiet part loud. Standing in the paddock, not the Formula One paddock, the real paddock, the one built on passion and mud and pure motorsport. He said this. This whole event is simply great, also with all the fans, and to see how passionate they are. I am happy to be a part of that. For me, the Nürburgring Nordschleife is one of the most idiotic circuits in the world, and I mean that in a positive way. Feel that? That's a man who is genuinely happy. Then came the line that cut straight through every press release Formula One will publish this season. When asked about the difference between Nordschleife racing and his day job in F1, Verstappen said, "At least you can go full throttle without having to look at the battery." That one sentence, casual, almost throwaway, said everything the sport's leadership refuses to acknowledge. Verstappen called the 2026 regulations anti-racing in preseason. 2 races deep into the year, he doubled down. Not softened, not walked back, doubled down. While other drivers quietly fell in line, suddenly discovering reasons to praise the new formula, Verstappen stayed exactly where he started. Consistent, unmoved, and watching the rest of the world catch up to his opinion. Here's what this means for the sport, on 3 levels. First, the drivers. Christopher Haase, the Audi driver who battled Verstappen wheel-to-wheel during the NLS2 opening stint, posted about receiving floods of positive messages after the race. He said that battle was exactly what he lives for in motorsport. Drivers who were overtaken by Verstappen weren't frustrated. They were posting the footage themselves. Because being in his orbit makes headlines. That does. And happen in Formula One anymore. Not like this. Second, the audience. Fans who had never watched a single lap of Nurburgring endurance racing tuned in because of Verstappen. And what they found was wheel-to-wheel combat, flat-out commitment, and drivers being judged on pure skill. The kind of racing that Formula One used to promise, and increasingly struggles to deliver. Third, the future. Verstappen is confirmed for the 24 hours of Nurburgring in May. The entire motorsport world will be watching. And the spotlight, for perhaps the first time, won't be pointing at Formula One. This wasn't just a race weekend. This was a warning signal. So where does this road lead? Scenario 1. Formula One course corrects. The 2026 regulations find their rhythm, the racing improves, and Verstappen rediscovers his hunger in the sport that made him a legend. The tension fades. The story ends quietly. Scenario 2. The gap widens. Verstappen's performances away from F1 continue to overshadow his weekends inside it. His enthusiasm for the Nurburgring, for Fuji, for anything other than a Grand Prix, becomes impossible to ignore. And one day, the announcement nobody thought was coming actually comes. Scenario 3. Formula One watches the viewing figures. Watches the social media numbers. Watches a four-time champion driving a Nissan in the rain pull more genuine emotion from fans than the last 3 Grands Prix combined. And realizes, far too late, that they spent years building a sport around one man, without ever asking what would happen if he chose to walk out the door. Dynasties don't fall with a crash. They fall the moment they start believing they're bigger than the people inside them. Does Formula One actually deserve Max Verstappen right now? Or has the sport already lost him? Not contractually, but emotionally, and just hasn't admitted it yet? One thing is certain. The next time Verstappen straps into something that isn't a Red Bull, and he will, the entire world will be watching. The only question is whether Formula One will be watching too. Because this season isn't about who's fastest anymore. It's about who still believes the fight is worth having. So tell me, is Formula One doing enough to keep its greatest champion interested? Or is the green hell already calling him home?